We have with us uh, Tarun Shridhar. He's an IAS of 1984 batch. He has served as Union Secretary, Animal Husbandry, Dairying and Fisheries with Government of India. Earlier to this assignment, he was the Additional Chief Secretary, Animal Husbandry and Fisheries in Himachal Pradesh government. Tarun Shridhar had also had a checkered career as a Joint Secretary, Fisheries in the Union Ministry of Agriculture and Farmers Welfare from 2008 to 13. He was actually instrumental in introducing SPF, Vanami shrimp culture in India, making country as the major global producer among the farm shrimp producing countries in the world. Welcome, Tarun Shridhar, for joining and taking out the time for today's webinar. In India, as you know, that if I take your attention towards dairy perspective, you know it very well, and I have heard you many places, many times, that you strongly advocate that we are production by mass rather than mass production, and around 70%, around 70% milk production is still coming from the bottom of the pyramid. So, how do you feel that the concept of digitalization can still add value in livestock farming in such a matrix like India?
Okay, thank you, Tanweer. I think you've set the tone very aptly right in the beginning. And thanks for very useful information on the terms of our feed intake and our protein and carbohydrate imbalance. First is, you see, we have a very unique dairy model. This model does not exist anywhere in the world. We have the biggest livestock population in the world. We are the biggest milk producer by miles. We are 188 million tons last year, and the latest data of the Department of Animal Husbandry and Dairying says 198.4 million tons. Number two is United States, which is 99 million tons. It is half of what we are. So the number two is half of what we are. We are the biggest, but we are one of the poorest as far as productivity is concerned. The global productivity level is about 2,400 kilograms per animal, and we are at 1,700 and 1,800. So ours is a very, very unique model. So when we talk in terms of digitalization, we have to understand what digitalization means for us. I don't have any hesitation in saying that people at the highest echelons of policy making in our country and people who are to manage the affairs of the dairy sector don't really understand what digitalization is. We have somehow come to feel that digitalization is an end in itself. Well, you digitize your data, so you have digitalized everything. Digitalize is only one of the means for optimum utilization of your resources and for balanced, scientific, rational decision making. Now, how could dairy be amenable to digitalization and we could enhance our productivity? You see, my theory has been that there is only one overarching issue with respect to our dairy sector, that is productivity. If we were to address this productivity issue, then others are all various subsets of productivity. And I would take up from what you started. You started from feed. I will start from breed. How do we do our breed selection? We do our breed selection, whether it's a farmer buying one animal or a big dairy entrepreneur who's buying 200 animals. The entire selection process is only what we talk in terms of phenotypes. We observe the characteristics, how many teeth, what is the color of the animal, what is the total mass of the animal, how does the animal look. And if we feel that the animal is healthy, we say it's very good. You know, in the good old days, whenever there was a child who was a child born was 5 or 6, 7 kgs, people used to have a very good, chubby, healthy child. A fat kid was associated with health. Things have changed. So we say a big, nice, healthy-looking animal is healthy. Now, first thing where digitalization could be of great help is in breed selection. You move from phenotypes to genotypes. You move from physical characteristics to genetic characteristics. That is where Government of India has started working in terms of genomic selection of animals. Now, you cannot expect a farmer because typically our dairy model is 1 to 2 animals, at the most 3 or 4 animals. A farmer who owns 5 to 10 animals is considered to be a big farmer in our country. So you can't expect a farmer with 1 or 2 animals to be going in for genomic selection. That is again wherein the government and the institutional framework has to come to provide these digital services to the farmers. Well, you want to buy an animal, you don't bother about finding the characteristics of the animal. We will give you the entire genetic makeup of the animal in terms of the sire characteristics, in terms of the dam yield, in terms of the entire parentage and the genetic makeup, as also jisko, what we call is the horoscope of the animals, the various generations. So first is the breed selection, where digitalization could be of immense help. Second most important critical element is feed. It is ultimately feed and breed which will determine the productivity of the animal. And I think you have yourself mentioned that again, what we give as feed is okay. It is a raw common sense. This much of dry feed, this much of green fodder, animal is okay. We have absolutely no analysis apart from very 10 to 12% of the organized feed industry which goes into our dairy business as to what is the composition of the feed, what is the requirement of each animal. Once you have a genotype selection, then you would also require what is the carbohydrate requirement, fat requirement, this thing. What we call is ration balancing program. The National Dairy Development Board has launched this program in a big way, but it's still restricted to Gujarat and a few areas. Now, this is feed selection and how to feed the animal, when to feed the animal is another area where digitalization could help a lot. Along with the feed, one thing which we have totally ignored in terms of our dairy management is water. None of our water policies have taken into account the water requirement of the animals. Dairy, primary raw dairy product is milk. More than 80% of milk is water. And the quantity of the water and the quality of the water which you feed to the animal is the most critical element in determining the quantity of the milk and the quality of the milk the animal is going to produce. We have absolutely no data and information as to what is the water availability for livestock, what is the requirement of water in various at the micro level, and what is the quality of the water and what kind of contaminants exist in water. So digitalization in terms of the entire gamut of water requirement for livestock is another area which could be very important. Now, there has been digitalization in terms of the processing and marketing, but again, it is at a very elementary and a rudimentary level. I'll just give you a small. Prachi, do I have time for 1 minute more to go carry on or no? Okay. Just, you see, yesterday I was in the Gurgaon market buying packets of milk. And a very interesting conversation ensued. One couple came and told that milk shop fellow, well, we purchased 2 packets of milk from you yesterday, but the moment we boiled the milk went bad. Now, I don't know whether, Alan, you will be familiar with this. In Indians, we have a habit of even pasteurized milk, we boil it and then consume it. We just don't consume pasteurized milk. We have to boil the milk. So he boiled, and the moment he boiled the milk, what we say, doodh phat gaya. The milk broke. The shopkeeper nonchalantly said, so what? You should have made cottage cheese out of it. He said, "Arey doodh phat gaya to kya hua? Paneer bana lete." Now it's a very small thing, and this set me thinking today that do we know that a farmer basically is producing milk and selling raw milk? Does he have that entire gamut of information and technologies and practices that, well, 1 liter of milk can probably give him 100 products, and 100 products which could be value-added projects. And there are traditional technologies as also modern and advanced technologies which are available. For instance, a simple thing like khoya. The khoya is a raw product for about 80 to 90% of the traditional Indian sweets. Now, milk converting into khoya gives you 4 times the value of milk. If today milk farmer is getting 30 rupees a kilogram, 30 rupees a liter for his milk, if he's to convert that 1 liter of milk into khoya, he'll probably get 100 to 120 rupees. And it's a very elementary kind of this. Now, does he have that entire information with him as to what's the composition of milk, etc.? Because he's totally now dependent upon the procurement agency. He sells it there and there. So this is another area where digitalized technology could place at his door the information and other things. Prachi, I'll stop here with one last point with respect to dairy, although I could go on and on, but I don't want to. We have come to associate dairy only with cow and to some extent buffalo. Now, please understand that 50% of our milk comes from buffalo, and 75 to 80% of the global buffalo milk production is from India. Buffalo is our unique characteristic of our dairy. Buffalo exists only in India, Pakistan, some in China, and few in Italy. Italy only for mozzarella cheese. We need to collate and compile data on buffalo, the genetics of buffalo, the genetic improvement schemes of buffalo, and that is where technology and digitalization could help in a big way. because buffalo is unique to India, and buffalo milk is amenable to much greater value addition because of its rich fat content. And along with buffalo, dairy also means camel, dairy also means goats, dairy also means sheep, and dairy also means equine milk. That is again an area which has totally been relegated to the background. This is another area wherein, when we are introducing digital technologies into management of the livestock sector, that is something, this thing. I've just reminded of one more point, Dr. Tanweer, coming back to that feed area, management of pastures. You see, our livestock, unlike the Western advanced countries, where they have their own dedicated, privately owned lands where the animals graze. So our large number of animals are dependent upon grazing in the village common lands, in the jungles, etc. We have absolutely no pasture management. We have no data or information as to what is the kind of grass, herbs, and weeds, whatever grows in the pasture, what is the nutritional, the balance, and whether they should nutritional value of those things. That is again where the technology could play a big role.
Thanks a lot for sharing your input. In fact, what you have said is very interesting point, that how do we look at it from digital perspective, the whole ambit of touch points which are related to livestock farming, which is not only feed but also breed, but also consumer touch points, because many of the things what you told is perhaps going to be the requirement for tomorrow, when the customer is going to be demanding the origin of those products, which is in a way linked to the subject of blockchain. When you're seeing things from government corridor perspective, let me take the privilege of asking a question. When it comes to the initiativeness from the government, there's no doubt that huge initiativeness has been taken in terms of digitalization in past couple of years. And some of the largest initiative, mammoth size initiative, whether it was Aadhaar card or many other things of such kind. So the point is that nothing is impossible when it comes to the scaling up of the application of digitalization is concerned. That has been proven with many of the past initiatives. My question to you is that when we see, as Girish also was saying, that artificial intelligence is all about, collecting the data and then analyzing it quickly and accurately, and then converting it into something which can be made use into different aspect of livestock farming. So what initiatives do you see, or are you are forcing government to be taking in the livestock farming aspect in the domain of digitalization, which will bring a sea change in coming, say, 5 years from now?
Thank you, Tanweer. I think I was very impressed, and I thank Dr. Girish. He made some very, very useful and important points. I'll just reiterate what I said earlier. Number one, in government, very few people understand what they mean by digitalization. In fact, I was just reading some of the questions and queries in the chat. Now, you see, data is very critical and very important, but data is not an end in itself. Digitization is only collecting and storing data in a particular form. But digitalization actually means how to use that data, whether it's artificial intelligence, how to transform the way you conduct business. That is very critical. That is one thing you have to understand. Now, while there is very little understanding of the importance of data and digitalization in government, and we've also been basically working on data which is suspect, and data whose integrity is not very, very high. But at the same time, certain very, very path-breaking initiatives have been taken in government in terms of digitalization. So we've got in a very paradoxical kind of a situation. Before I come to that, I would also say that there is also a need to not either or. When I was talking in terms of phenotypes or genotypes, it doesn't mean that genotype replaces phenotype and phenotype is an alternative to genotype. There has to be a good marriage and blend between the two. Livestock management is one area. Livestock management as also fisheries. Even farming are one areas where traditional wisdom and traditional knowledge is very good. Right now, we are in a situation where we can actually take off. Here we have all the tools of artificial intelligence. And if we could document our traditional wisdom and then blend the two, we will be in a very, very happy situation. Particularly in livestock sector, digitalization, what Dr. Girish had mentioned with respect to poultry. Now, poultry, you see, more than 80% of the poultry in this country is organized poultry. So it is quite amenable to technology infusion of new practices, be it management practices or technological practices or artificial intelligence. Whereas rest of the livestock, whether it is dairy or fisheries, aquaculture, more than 95% is unorganized. That is where the challenge comes. Few initiatives which the government has taken, which are very good, and but they could actually see the light of the day in terms of tangible outcomes. That is only if the real stakeholders of the livestock sector, that is the farmers and others down the value chain, capitalize on that and push the government to achieve the actual outcomes rather than just the process. You see, it started with the latest 20th livestock census. Well, interestingly, well, I can be a bit boastful also. When I took over as secretary of the department, I found that the 5-year livestock census, which was to take place last year, had not even commenced because there was general, very, very low priority put on collection of data and collating of data. The general thing was if we have X livestock population, that we have in livestock population has been growing by 10%, add 10% and cook up a figure. There is a need to conduct a census. But not only was the census conducted, it was conducted in a digital mode. So here we had a census in the country wherein the livestock population was being updated in real time. And not only the absolute numbers were getting updated in real times, the huge database was getting created. No, government, it's a layman terminology, but in government, people confuse data with database. They feel that once you have created a static and stable non-moving page of data, that is enough. But here it was a database being created wherein you can take real-time decision in terms of artificial insemination, in terms of health status, in terms of disease management, in terms of socioeconomic parameters of livestock farming and everything. So that was a very good initiative. Another good initiative which the government has started again is a very good thing is the genomic selection. Now we've created a genomic chip for even the indigenous cattle, wherein the whole lot of, as I say, in India, we said the Janam Patri of an animal will be available. Everybody knows about Aadhaar card, but nobody knows that we have a Pashu Aadhaar also. 15 crore, 150 million animals, the database have been created of 150 million animals. And I think within it's just a matter of a couple of years when this database would have more than about 600 animals, not only cows and buffaloes, it would also basically then extend to goats, sheep, and as also the pigs. So these are some of the initiatives which be taken. Now there's a very good portal and also the app. Although I'm not a big fan of app-based management, because there are too many apps floating around, and everybody has become a app startup making apps. But there's also an app called eGopala, a very fancy name. It links the farmer with the semen providers, it links the farmer with feed providers, it links the farmer with the technology providers, it links the farmer with experts, it links the farmer with markets also. He could put his animal on the platform. So it's an all comprehensive platform which is created. Now, what has happened is again the difference between digitization and digitalization. There are these standalone things all over the place. There's this data information floating all over the place. You need somebody who can integrate that, and you can have a one-stop solution for all these things. That is where I would say it's available. That is where probably discussions like this, or maybe at a much greater scale, where people actually understand this data just doesn't mean a figure. Data doesn't mean so many animals available, so much milk production. This means that there's a whole lot of algorithms which can be created by it and which can lead to better management. Digitalization in livestock could actually be transformation. Sorry, Prachi, I always get conscious of the 3-minute embargo which Prachi had put. We have 530 million animals producing 198 billion tons of milk. If we were to go in for digitalized management of this thing, probably we would have 1/4 of number of the animals producing 198 million tons of milk. Look at the kind of value addition which will take place. Look at the kind of margin which the farmers, everybody down or up the value chain will get. Then you could actually address the productivity issues. As I said, 1700 to 1800 kgs per animal per annum compared to 2800 global average. Israel, Alan would bear me out, has 13,000 kilograms per animal. Even if we were to just double it, we would have 300 million tons of milk. Then again, your digital solutions would tell you how to handle that milk, how to create value-added products, how to handle markets with that. So it's a digitalization, one aspect of AI, this whole lot of not only not only raw technology, but also in terms of the management practices and the management philosophies and theories and managing the markets and consumer behaviors, etc. Could be there. But right now, we are just dealing with absolute numbers. So many animals, so much milk, we are number one. It is only because of numbers that we are number one. We are not number one on account of some infusion of our technology or knowledge. We have the traditional wisdom to manage it, but we'll always remain number one. China and India will remain number one in most of the things in terms of absolute numbers. But lastly, I'll close it here. When we talk in terms of livestock management and using of digitalization or other such technologies or artificial intelligence, we should not talk in terms of number. We should talk in terms of value. Are we number one in terms of value? Is our farmer, if our farmer produces the highest quantity of milk, he should also be the highest earner milk producer in the world. But he's the lowest earning milk producer with producing the highest quantity. So we should talk in terms of value of our effort. And that is where technologies such as digitalization, which is part of AI, would come into play. And government has a very critical and committed role to play in that. Thank you. Sorry, Prachi, if I exceeded the time.
Excellent. As usual, Tarun Shridharji, you always put a lot of forthwith thought, and you have very nicely put forth the commitment of the government. At the same time, you also have put a very pertinent questions, like it's not just about value or it's not just about number, but it's about value of our efforts. And that's where perhaps the shift has to happen. So let me take Tarun Shridhar. The question is more about the application of learning from different countries. When it comes to the learning from best practices of different countries, we know that government also takes initiatives, and there are a lot of things which are done in that direction. But when it comes to the exact replicating, there are sometimes gaps which are found. So do you feel that digitalization or process of digitalization can help in terms of better replication of the better practices of different countries, more so in case of dairy farming?
Okay, Tanveer, my straight away answer would be yes, period. But at the same time, let me remind you of how my opening statement was that ours is a very unique model. But why is our unique model? Because in our country, livestock rearing and especially dairying has essentially been an integral part of the social and cultural life of our rural areas. And even till a few decades back, in many of the communities, it was not considered to be good to sell milk. Milk was animals were kept primarily for milk for domestic consumption. It was only the surplus which was sold, and that also after it was shared by neighbors. This was predominant in many of the communities. It is gradually when people saw monetary value in dairying and milk that milk started getting sold. Now, where do we stand now? Now, today, if you just pick up any middle class boy or girl and ask him what does he wish to do when he grows up, I don't think you would have ever come across a case where he says that I want to be a dairy farmer or I want to be a dairy entrepreneur. See, the future of India as a giant milk producer and as a good dairy nation depends upon dairy sector becoming what we call sexy. And it is only digitalization, because you see, whereas India captured the minds of the Western world is because of our huge human resource in IT. Now, much of the world owes its digitalization to the intellectual capital which was imported from India. So that is where I said that for future of dairy or agriculture sector, livestock rearing lies in making these sectors attractive. You see, today, even a young boy or a girl, even from a low middle class family or even a poor family, he is more concerned about his smartphone, whether the smartphone is amenable with the 4G technology, whether he can download this thing. So he wants a profession where he can replace a smartphone every year, every 2 or 3 years. Dairy and livestock has a potential for that. But it's not my statement. You see, there was 5 or 6 years back, FAO had conducted a study of various countries, and their India chapter said that the potential of livestock, dairy, and fishery sector in India is that for every 1 rupee invested well, you can earn 4 rupees. So the rate of return could be 4 times of what your investment is. Well, well, even if you give some allowance of for the margin of error, it could be 3.5 or maybe 3 rupees, which is again a very good rate of return. But how do you ensure? Because as a livestock is not a very attractive profession. You keep animals and you keep look up the hygiene of animals, collect their dung, etc., etc. How do you make it sexy? You make it sexy when you show money. You make it sexy when you introduce technologies and things, wherein the person is very proud of the fact that I am well. I have got robotic technology. I've got artificial intelligence. I make use of automated milching of cows. My health management systems are all computerized. From my smartphone, I can know whether my animal is well fed or not, etc. So I think artificial technology, apart from other things, has this great potential in making this sector attractive. And pardon my use of the word, making this sector sexy for urbanites also. And here we create a farmer entrepreneurs, people who are not right now, whether it is crop farming or livestock farming or aquaculture, it is those traditional vocations, families which have been engaged in these vocations since generations. AI and this infusion of technology and good management practices has this potential of pushing the urbanites and non-traditional families into this and creating a huge army of entrepreneurs. My answer is yes. I am a big optimist in that.
Very thanks, Tanvi, for the nice and clear answer on that. We are almost in the final, but I'm very tempted, in fact, to pick one very interesting question which has come, that how digitalization can help in creating consumer awareness about increased chicken and egg or milk consumption. Milk I'm adding, although it was not there in the basic question. But I find that it's a very interesting question that on one side, when we talk about productivity increasement, the other side, digitalization can be a huge positive impact making tool for increasing the consumer awareness. So I understand Tarun Shridhar has been quite, good orator on this subject. He has written a lot of pieces also in various informed articles. I'm sure you'd love to pick up this question. Yes, sir.
You see, I am just a jack of all trades, master of none. So,
I'll bet to disagree on that.
okay. No, you see, first thing is, you see, one thing which we are woefully short on is traceability. Number one thing where digitalization can really help is the giving the consumer this confidence. He knows where his product is coming from. Today, probably, you see, you again coming to milk only. You added milk. Okay, let me start with milk. We don't know where our milk is coming from. And you have got whole lot of pretenders in the market. Some says ki organic milk of cow. What is organic milk? There's no definition of organic milk. If they would say organically produced milk, what do you mean by organically produced milk? Are you keeping track of, or are you tracing each and every morsel which is going into inside the cow's belly? Suddenly buffalo milk has become bad and cow milk has come. There's something called A1 milk, A2 milk. There's no scientific evidence. So first thing is this element of traceability, be it milk, be it chicken, be it that. Second, we have a whole lot of, say, something called free-range eggs being sold, especially in our urban markets. There's nobody to certify whether the egg is free-range and what do you mean by free-range. All this kind of information and data is something which digitalization can help and put at the door of the consumer. You see, the beauty of digitalization is whether you collect information on one aspect, it can multiply into hundreds of different things, and a consumer can sift out what he wants. Now, if what I say, like we have this INAF program that is called Information Network of Animal Productivity and Health. This is capturing every information which can be very useful, right from the dairy farmer to the from the farmer to the dairy processor to the marketer to the packager, ultimately the consumer. So there's a whole lot of information. As a consumer, I want the information on whether the milk I'm consuming or the meat I'm consuming came from a healthy animal. I can get that. Whether the milk or the egg or chicken or meat I'm consuming came from an animal which was fed well, which was inoculated, which was vaccinated, which kind of pastures he or she grazed on. There's a whole lot of, you see, what is the beauty of digitalization? As I said earlier, again, this is only what I've learned is only from my own experience. There is data all around. We don't know where to get that information. Digitalization gives you this is the benefit of giving this information to everyone. Today, you open Facebook. I use Facebook. Every day it gives you friend suggestion. How does it give friends? Today I have attended this webinar. I think probably 50% of people on this webinar who are on Facebook, I would start getting friends suggestion from that. What is this? This is what digital technology is. It is they've just captured and collated the data which could be even remotely linked to me. So look at what all consumer can get. Everything I'm consuming, I could trace the origin of that, the journey of that product, and also the integrity of that product. And most importantly, you see, we are high on quantity, we are poor on quality. We are nowhere we are nowhere in the export markets as far as dairy is concerned. For the last 2 decades, we have been number one producer, but probably the lowest exporter. We are the number three egg producer in the world, but we are apparently 28th or 29th as far as export markets are concerned. Why are we not able to capture global markets? Because the discerning urban consumer is not going to consume your product unless he is certain that the quality and integrity of your product has not been compromised. That is where digitalization can help in terms of tracing not only the journey of the product, tracing also the quality of the product throughout the value chain. Throughout the value chain is right from the inputs which go into production up to the level when it comes reaches the table or the kitchen of the consumer. That is where digitalization could be of immense help. I hope I've been able to.
No, perfectly fine. In fact, perfectly fine. You said it absolutely right. Like, this actually is the way we have to look at that, how the application part is going to be seen, and how we are going to be seeing the application in a way that the consumer awareness is getting taken. In fact, I'll put it in this way that last year we all saw the negative side of propaganda of digitalization because it impacted the poultry consumption to a very large extent. Now, if we look at it, the same thing from positive perspective, that if we are projecting the consumption behavior or the utilization advantage of animal protein, whether chick, egg, or milk, for improving the immunity, which is being done by industry of late, to what extent it can have a positive impact on the overall consumption. Perhaps we'll have to look at it from that side, because the power of digitalization is immense in shaping up the behavior of the consumer in multiple ways. So it was absolute pleasure, actually. We couldn't pick all the questions which I'm seeing here, and I'm extremely delighted with you all, esteemed panel members. As I promised in the beginning to all the participants that we all are going to be immensely benefited with your insights. I have definitely got a lot of insights from each one of you. Thanks a lot for taking out your time out of your schedules for being part of this webinar. And it was my absolute privilege.